Alright, so I'm painting the hull. Always useful to paint the lighter colour first. And if you're doing a waterline, I find that this is the best way of doing it, to use a bit of masking tape to mark out the line, then use the lighter colour, whether it's on the lower hull or the upper hull, put that on first and paint to the masking tape. What's good about that is that when you've finished and you take the masking tape off, and usually there's a couple of coats required in doing this, it leaves a ridge, and when you put the other colour, the darker colour, in this case on the lower hull, up to this, and you can see here this ridge, oops, it's torn, when you put the other colour up to it, you'll find that you're painting up to a ridge, which makes it very easy, plus the darker colour covers any streaks. So what I'm doing now is I've decided to fasten this conning tower down far better. So I'm putting a screw in the forward part of the conning tower, and one I'm going to put in the stern as well as a middle fixing screw. This is neither here nor there if you're watching this, but prior to this I just had one screw in the middle, and it caused the conning tower tended to move. Now I've made here a transfer, and this transfer I've stuck on to this. I've got a link on the screen that you can see, and it just shows you where I bought this transfer paper from. And I just looked up the U-boat and printed out the emblem. It was quite simple to do that. So here's the boat now all together. You can see the Nautilus in the background as well. And what I'm doing here is I'm just getting the rigging right. And the rigging, I've actually used elastic material in this because I want it to remain nice and taut. And if I don't do that, it's not going to. That's the new breather, and this is the new contraption that takes the air out of the ballast tank and puts it through the subtech valve. If what I'm saying doesn't make any sense, don't worry. If you look at the other videos, you'll work it out. And here is the first lick of paint on my new gun. And I've got a whole video in relation to the build of this gun because I'm very pleased with this. It came up very nicely indeed. I think it's just scratch built, and it looks pretty spectacular. So now we're going to weather the boat. And you can buy kits for this, and I've said this before, but what I like to do is use a file, in this case a bastard file, some nice coloured pencils, and this is the colour of rust. This is the very first thing that I'm going to put together, but really, as you will see, we don't really need very much in the way of rust. So that's some nice orange. Now I've got some greeny coloured stuff, then some browny coloured stuff, and then some black. And between them all, I'm going to weather this boat and have a lot of fun with it. So here we are with the gun, and I've now got some clear, flat acrylic, and I've just dipped the brush into the black. Now the beauty of doing this is that the black is a bit grainy, and all of the colours that you put on are grainy because basically they are grains of colour, and it looks, I think, quite realistic. And I like doing this by hand. I mean, some people spray their boats. I really like the notion of doing it all and having it being quite artistic. You'll notice here I'm using green, and I'm doing something quite interesting. This is quite subtle. I just want to get the water line around the top of the ballast tank, and I'm just wiping my fingers between each swipe, but you can see what I'm doing here. I just want to get that very subtle touch on here, which is saying that there's greeny moldy stuff just there because this is where the boat sits in the water for most of the time. And now this is putting some rust on, and as you can see, I'm very sparing with this. You really don't need much. And once again, because it leaves little grains behind, it really looks very realistic. You get little sharp bits of orange, and then some of them seem to blend into the background, just like rust does. So I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. And I like the, as I've said, I like the artistic side of doing all of this. If you're going to do this, once again, especially with rust, less is more. Absolutely, less is more. I had someone come up to me and ask me what my plans were to fix the U-boat, because it's clearly rusting. And I took that as a compliment, because that's exactly what you want. Now, around the anchor, there's a lot of goop, so that's getting a bit more rust. Now I'm taking a bit of time over this, because this is a nice little feature here of these hatches, and how the rust from the hatches run down the side of the boat. You notice that I'm not taking anything below the waterline, because of course below the waterline there's no streaks, because the water just washes away any streaks. Just a slight touch of rust, and it looks nice, I've got to say. That's pretty amazing. So between the green and the black and a bit of rust, we've got a nice finish on this, and I'm pretty happy with it overall. That's the flat varnish, and the boat has dried. I'm going to give the whole thing a coat of this flat varnish. And what this is going to do, apart from everything else, is it's going to make everything a nice, similar, flat colour or shade. Plus, it's going to hold all the rust in place.